Donald Trump just panicked behind the scenes, all thanks to Stephen Miller's latest unhinged scandal spiraling out of control. The backlash was so intense, Trump had to make a desperate call to try and clean up the mess, but the damage was already done, and the rant that triggered the firestorm, it starts right here, with Stephen Miller going full meltdown on live TV.
California and Los Angeles are waging insurrection against the federal government. They are protecting those who traffic in the suffering of children. And by the way, do you know why so many of these unaccompanied alien minors are being put to work in slave wages and slave conditions all across California? To pay off their cartel debts. The Democrat Party is funneling these profits from rape, profits from exploitation, and yes, profits from murder, into the hands of the cartels that control the north of Mexico, that assassinate politicians, that assassinate judges, that assassinate women and children, and that smuggle fentanyl into our country. Cartels are waging war against America, and their allies are the Democrat Party. And their allies are the Democrat politicians that are incentivizing these migrant mobs to try to murder our ICE officers in cold blood. I never thought we would ever see the day when Democrat politicians would use language and use rhetoric that would encourage illegal aliens and radical left nonprofits to try to murder ICE officers.
Stephen Miller, yes, that Stephen Miller, just went on Fox News to accuse California of committing insurrection against the federal government. That's right, a man who worked for a president who incited an actual violent insurrection is now pretending Los Angeles is the real threat. You seriously can't make this stuff up. He claims Democrats are helping cartels commit rape, murder, and exploitation, and that migrants are being incentivized to kill ICE agents. It's like he mashed together every Fox News buzzword and called it a national security briefing. But let's be clear, MAGA doesn't care about protecting kids, stopping trafficking, or upholding law and order. If they did, Donald Trump wouldn't be personally blocking the release of documents tied to Jeffrey Epstein. You know, the guy Trump partied with. The guy Trump called a terrific guy. Republicans love to scream about chaos at the border, but they're silent about the chaos in their own party because fear is profitable and outrage is a campaign strategy. Miller's trying to look tough for the cameras, but behind the scenes, Trump isn't having it. He ripped into Miller on a private call. And that meltdown, it ties directly into a deeply disturbing event that just happened, and we've got it coming up. Buckle up.
Say goodbye. ICE blasted as out of control after farm raid turns deadly. A Mexican farm worker who reportedly fell from a greenhouse while trying to hide during a Trump administration raid on a Southern California farm has died from his injuries, the United Farm Workers Union announced Friday. Federal authorities, including U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement or ICE agents, many clad in military-style gear, stormed farms in Santa Barbara and Ventura counties on Thursday to execute search warrants for undocumented people at Glass House Farms in Camarillo, which grows state legal cannabis as well as tomatoes and cucumbers. The invading agents were met with spirited resistance from hundreds of community members who rushed to the site in support of targeted workers. Federal officers responded by firing tear gas and less lethal projectiles at crowds of people who were blocking area roadways in a bid to prevent arrests. The Associated Press reported that a farm worker identified as Jaime Alanes phoned his wife in Mexico and told her about the raid in progress, saying he was hiding with other workers. Alanes fell from his hiding place and suffered a broken neck, fractured skull, and a rupture in an artery that pumps blood to the brain. His niece, Sina, who did not want to give her full name, told the AP, "They told us he won't make it and to say goodbye," she said. UFW said Friday that other workers, including U.S. citizens, remain unaccounted for. Democratic U.S. lawmakers were among those condemning the Trump administration's crackdown and mourning Alanis' death. A farm worker has died following a federal raid in Southern California. This is heartbreaking, deeply troubling development, Congresswoman Norma Torres, a Democrat of California, said on social media.
This is the horrifying real-world cost of Trump's fear campaign. A man lost his life, not from crime, not from drugs, but from trying to hide during an ICE raid at a Southern California farm. Jaime Alanes, a farm worker, was so terrified when Trump's militarized ICE agents, decked out like they were raiding a war zone, stormed the fields, he climbed into a greenhouse to hide and fell. He called his wife to say goodbye. Let that sink in. This wasn't a criminal. This was a man picking tomatoes. Now he's dead, and other US citizens from that same farm raid are still missing. And now Trump is realizing it's bad optics, even for him. That's why he just turned on Stephen Miller hard in a leaked call that shows how deep the rift has gotten. Watch this.
Insider spills on Trump's panicked call to ICE Barbie as protests raged. A panicked Donald Trump phoned Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to slam the brakes on a coast-to-coast surge of immigration raids after furious street protests erupted. In late May, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller set a quota for 3,000 immigrant arrests per day, following on the president's campaign pledge to carry out the largest mass deportation operation in U.S. history. The effort sparked nationwide protests in June, starting in Los Angeles, where Trump dispatched 4,000 members of the National Guard to quell demonstrations over the objections of Gavin Newsom. Amid the fallout and slumping poll numbers, Trump called Noem, dubbed Ice Barbie for her love of dolling up for the cameras at immigration raids and in front of detained migrants, among other bizarre publicity stunts to pump the brakes. He said, "We're going to do this targeted." One former official who heard this mid-June told Reuters, describing the president's concern that indiscriminate arrest of farmhands and hotel maids were becoming a political nightmare. Details of Trump's call to Noem have not been previously reported. ICE quietly froze operations at farms, restaurants, and meatpacking plants within hours of the call, with senior ICE official Tatum King telling field offices to ease up. But the stand-down list lasted only days before Miller and Noem rescinded the order, leaving agents and activists scrambling to work out what came next, according to Reuters. The episode came as a rare crack in the previously ironclad alliance between Trump and Miller, Reuters reported. Miller's obsessive drive to purge the country of undocumented immigrants has become so notorious inside DHS that officials assigned one unlucky staffer to field his constant calls to spare senior figures from the daily tongue lashings, a former colleague told Reuters.
This might be the juiciest leak yet from Trump's inner circle, because it exposes two massive cracks inside the MAGA machine, and they're both crumbling fast. First, we now know that Donald Trump, the self-declared king of border control, completely panicked after his mass deportation stunt backfired. Protesters flooded the streets, his approval rating started to nosedive, and suddenly, the bravado was gone. He picked up the phone, called Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, yes, Ice Barbie herself, and told her to slow everything down. "We're going to do this targeted," he said. Translation, Stephen Miller is ruining my campaign. Which brings us to the second and even bigger problem. Trump isn't in control. Just days after Trump's call, Miller and Noem overruled him. ICE was told to crank operations back up. That's not just disobedience. That's a full-on power grab. Miller clearly believes he runs immigration policy, and if Trump's own staff doesn't follow his orders, is he even president in anything but name? This leak also reveals a growing panic inside MAGA. Miller's campaign of cruelty is turning into a political liability, and Trump knows it. But instead of confronting him, Trump retreats again into PR mode, leaving people like Kristi Noem to botch the whole operation. And trust, she's botching it badly. She's too busy playing dress up at ICE raids for Fox News photo ops while the backlash snowballs. It's amateur hour, and it's catching up with them fast. But Trump's not just losing control of Miller or Noem, he's losing his entire grip on MAGA, and someone on the Hill just called it out with receipts. Jared Moskowitz saw this circus unraveling and absolutely torched them all. Here it is.
You know, heartbreak. You're talking 120 people, 36 kids, and a lot of people are still missing. I mean, this is one of the worst floods in modern time. And so obviously our heart breaks for the community that's experienced this. I mean, but at the same time, this is what government is for. Government is supposed to be there in your time of need. Government is supposed to help when there are these major disasters that are over the capacity of local governments. That's what FEMA is for. And the reports coming out that FEMA didn't show up with swiftwater rescue crews for 72 hours is a total deviation from how FEMA worked when I was the director of emergency management in Florida. I would have been woken up by my regional administrator in the middle of the night. By the way, Florida right now doesn't have a regional administrator. That position's empty because they were forced out, along with over 20% of FEMA's workforce. There would have been Black Hawk helicopters that would have been moved by FEMA for search and rescue. They would have had Task Force 1 and Task Force 2 that would have been mobilized within 24 hours on the site. After 72 hours, unfortunately, search and rescue, them showing up then is not as needed at that critical moment.
So you're describing what would have happened had this been under your jurisdiction. How would you describe the response in Texas?
Well, Kristi Noem doesn't know what she's doing. She has no idea what she is doing when it comes to FEMA. Look, FEMA needed reform. The emergency management industry has been saying that for a long period of time. I have a bill with Byron Donalds, who's running for governor of Florida, to take FEMA out of Homeland because we want FEMA to be faster. And Homeland is a giant bureaucracy with 22 other agencies. They're disabusing FEMA, making it do the grants of all the other agencies within Homeland. And so it needed reform, but that's not what the secretary did. What she did is she broke it. Okay, and she broke it on purpose so that when it fails this summer, she can say, oh, see, we told you FEMA doesn't work. But I actually don't think people in the West Wing know how bad FEMA is, know how bad what she's done to FEMA. She's appointed an interim administrator with zero emergency management experience. That was on purpose because she doesn't want anything to happen unless it comes to her desk. She's actually made FEMA slower, less efficient. So much for the E and Doge for what she's done to FEMA. And it's going to cost lives, and it's going to hurt red states more than anybody else. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Kansas, places that have tornadoes. This is not good for states that would go bankrupt without FEMA. And they've slowed down the reimbursement process to the slowest it's ever been. Well, when you slow down reimbursement, you slow down resources. That means cities and counties slow down their decisions because they don't know if they're going to get reimbursed, and they don't have the funds to do major disaster cleanup. So this is a total disaster going into hurricane season. Let's just pray we get lucky and we don't have a bad hurricane season. But if we do, I think you could see a Michael Brown moment.
So, Congressman, you took me exactly where I wanted to take the next line of questioning. Is hurricane season about to arrive? You just listed a lot of states that are traditionally in the path of hurricanes. Of course, Florida, your home state, right there as well. So in the interim, as you've raised a lot of concerns here about FEMA, is there anything that Congress can do right now to try to mitigate what you're saying are the dangerous cuts from the administration?
Oh, Congress could have done a lot of things in the last 8 months on this topic. I've had dozens of conversations with members, and they've been dialoguing with their relationships in Homeland and in the White House.
Jared Moskowitz just exposed a time bomb hiding inside the federal government, and her name is Kristi Noem. FEMA, the very agency meant to protect Americans during disasters, has been gutted from the inside, not reformed, sabotaged, delays, missing rescue crews, an empty leadership post in Florida. All because the people in charge are more interested in headlines than saving lives. And here's the kicker. It's the red states that will suffer the most. Tornado-prone, hurricane-prone, underfunded states, left high and dry because FEMA has been hijacked by political games. Moskowitz isn't just predicting disaster, he's sounding the alarm before another Katrina-level failure hits. And if the next hurricane season is anything like the last, the blood will be on this administration's hands. If you want more unfiltered truth like this, hit like, smash subscribe, and stick around, because what just leaked out of Trump's orbit, it's even uglier than you think.